Well, welcome to our Peter Lehmann tasting, and may I say how thrilled I am to be able to join you all. And to be honest with you, I only wish that I was with you there in Bali or parts of Indonesia and not here in a chilly Melbourne. And indeed, as you're probably aware, well, like you in Bali, where sadly a lot of restaurants are not open at the moment due to this COVID-19, which is really slowing us all down. It's just one of those terrible times, but we all have to battle on together. And as a hospitality industry, we think very positively about the months and years to come, that we'll all be able to get together at some stage and enjoy a glass of wine. And one day I hope to be able to come and join you there, as I say, in Bali or wherever. Now, today we're going to be looking at the wines of Peter Lehmann from the Barossa Valley. So, Buddy, are you okay to move the slides on? Can Buddy hear me to move the slide down?
Yes, I think.
Yeah, just let me know.
Yes, please go. Yep. Okay, so today's discussion is going to be about who we are at Peter Lehmann, a bit about our brand story at Peter Lehmann, a little about who we are and where the winery comes from, the Barossa as a region in South Australia, and where we sit on a global scale, as well as we're going to touch upon our portfolio. We're going to look at some of the wines that are available to you in Indonesia and in Bali, as well as then have a bit of a chat about what are the most important things that are to us at Peter Lehmann, and hopefully to you wherever your restaurant or market is. So, and then we'll have a question and answer session, and hopefully we'll have a glass of wine on the way through. So hopefully some of you will have a glass there ready to go. We're going to look at 3 or 4 wines as we go along during the tasting. So next slide. Thank you, Buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a bit of background about myself. I've been lucky enough to be working for Peter Lehmann now for well over 25 to 27 years now. So Peter Lehmann Wines is not a new brand or company to me, and I've been lucky enough to be working in the Australian wine industry now for about 40 odd years. And that has meant that I've travelled over most parts of the world and spent time working in the London wine trade, as well as in France and making wine in Bordeaux, as well as back here in Australia, in the Barossa and in Tasmania, where I'm originally from. But I'll let you read that slide at your leisure a little later on. That's enough about me, I think. Buddy, thank you. Okay, the Peter Lehmann brand story. And this goes back, ladies and gentlemen, really it's a story about a wonderful man called Peter Lehmann. And indeed our story, even though it's not the oldest story in the world of wine in Australia, it goes back some 40 years, as we've just celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, something we're incredibly proud of. And it's a wonderful story about a great man who sadly, Peter is no longer with us. He died back in 2013, but I spent many years working with him, and his wife, Margaret, is still alive, and she's a wonderful person and a great inspiration to us all that work for the company. Please, Buddy, next slide. Who are we at Peter Lehmann? We believe in winemaking is a timeless craft. It is all about handcrafted wines. It's about believing in the Barossa Valley where we live. It believes in the quality of our wines and the fact that we make world-class wines that we can sell all over the globe, to the north and southern hemispheres alike. We're very proud of the quality of what we do. We don't take any shortcuts or no half measures in what we do. We just believe in that if you put in the hard work and believe in what you can do, it will come together beautifully for us. So next slide, thanks, Buddy. Our story, as I mentioned earlier, is really about Peter Lehmann, the great man himself, who was indeed a 5th generation Barossan. And Peter, who started his winemaking career back in 1947. And his father was the local Lutheran pastor who'd been there in the Barossa for many, many years. And Peter, when he first started his winemaking career, was only 27 years old, and he went up to work for a wonderful company called Yellowtail Wines. I'm not sure if many of you have heard of Yellowtail, but he spent the first 13 years there where he learnt some of the great lessons in life about not only winemaking, but as you can see from the back of the back image in the slide we have in front of you, it was all about a handshake, about handshake agreements, and my word is my bond, which was one of the most important aspects that we have at Peter Lehmann. It's about trustworthy, it's about credibility, and it's about believing in what we do. And where our history goes back now 40 years, in that time, we've come a very long way to be considered one of the great wineries of the world. Indeed, we have been awarded World's Best Winery on 2 occasions, which I'll come and talk to you about a little later on. But it's all about that community in the Barossa, about believing with the people that we work with, our growers, who are the most important parts of what we do, because we have some 140 odd families or growers that provide the fruit to us now. So I'll let you read that slide at your leisure, but let's continue on. Woody? Next slide when you're ready.
Woody?
You there, Woody?
Woody, are you there?
Hello?
Oh, moment. What happened with... Okay. Moment. Maybe something wrong with Woody.
Is Woody there?
I think Woody having... Moment. Sorry for that, guys. Woody gone missing.
The best laid plans.
The best light is coming.
Hi, Josh.
Hi, Malcolm. How are you? Hello, everyone.
Joined us. Well done.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Sorry,
Hi,
I'm very late. I've just been on holiday, and we got very bad traffic and roadworks. So sorry I'm late, but it's nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. Woody is coming back.
We're back. Great.
I think Woody is also during holiday.
Bad connection is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Hi, Josh, how are you?
Hi, Buddy. How are you?
Vacation?
Yeah, it was nice. Very busy. Lots of driving. But yeah, I thought I had plenty of time, but we ended up being very late. But please continue.
All right. Yeah, this slide.
Hang on, Woody, where are you up to?
Next slide.
The grape one. Yeah, the next slide. Yeah.
That's it.
Anyway.
Well done. A story that lives on. And indeed, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we have a very proud history of what we're doing. And it really is something that we're very, very proud of. And the fact that the company, even without Peter, without his son Doug, and without the next generation, and now that we're a part of the Casella Family Brands organization, which of course are the people behind Yellowtail, which is an enormous global brand now, and I'm sure being sold in Indonesia through Budi and his crew. At Peter Lehmann, we're just delighted to be able to say that we're under the umbrella of Casella today. And so it's all about individuals working together, that word community, and being a family that produce these wonderful wines with passion, with belief in what we're doing. So it's all about the winemakers, the growers, the viticulturists, all pulling together to make the wonderful wine that we have today in front of us. Okay, thanks, Budi. Okay, our success story. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see there the wonderful photograph of Peter, that right in the middle. And you can see just to the right of that is Peter with his son Doug and wife Margaret. And that's a very typical photograph of them all, because they were very happy, jovial people that loved life and loved what they were doing. And the photograph just underneath at the bottom is with John Casella meeting Margaret during the time of we were being taken over. And it was a very joyous occasion for all of us, because we knew that our future was going to be secured. and that we had wonderful avenues to continue to export our wines throughout the world, which basically, ladies and gentlemen, you can see now there are 41 countries around the world that we export our brand to today. Our awards, our wines are multi-award winning and world-renowned. And because, as I mentioned earlier, we are now twice we have been named as the International Winemaker of the Year, winning this award in London back in 1996 and 2000, and something that we were very, very proud of, the International Winemaker of the Year. And as part of that, we've also been the Australian Producer of the Year on 3 occasions, obviously in 1996, 2000, and then again in 2003. But another fact that we're very proud of, before Peter died, he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award. The first time anyone in the Southern Hemisphere had been given this accolade. Back in 2009 is something that he was given, and it's only ever been awarded now about 3 times in the Southern Hemisphere, and this award is now about 55 years old. So something that we were very proud of, that Peter in his lifetime was able to achieve. But ladies and gentlemen, as part of our accolades, we've also been written up in the Wine Spectator, with our wine scoring 90 points on more than 50 occasions, as well as the Wine Advocate magazine, 90 plus points on 26 occasions, and our Cellar Door, which is in the Barossa itself, where people come and buy our wines when they're visiting the valley. We have been awarded the Winery of the Year back in 2013. And for those of you that may know James Halliday's name, he is considered one of the top gurus of wine in the world. Certainly here in Australia, we are considered one of his 5-star wineries. So we're delighted to be able to suggest that's very much the part of us at Peter Lehmann. So next slide, Buddy. Here we go. We're going to now talk a little about the Barossa Wine Region and where we sit. And as you can see in that, the Barossa Valley is just north of Adelaide. So next, here we go. As you can see, the Barossa can rightly claim to be Australia's premier wine region. And I think it's fair to say that without question, for those people that know anything about the Australian wine industry, the Barossa Valley leads the way. Our history goes back well over 170 years. We've been making wine in the Barossa since the early 1840s, and I think it's fair to say that we are recognised as one of the world's premier Shiraz producing regions. In fact, when people think of Shiraz, or Syrah, as it's often pronounced by the French, the South Africans, the New Zealanders, and many other parts of the world, the Californians pronounce it as Syrah, but in Australia, we call it Shiraz. But indeed, the Shiraz that we send and export is about, if you like, that variety is about 43% of all wine exports around the world that we send. But it's also, we're famous for growing Cabernet Sauvignon, Grenache, and as well as Riesling and Semillon. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, do you know that we have in the Barossa today, we have the oldest Shiraz, Semillon, Mourvedre, and Grenache wines or vines in the world planted in the Barossa today, because we've been so fortunate that we've never been affected by a funny little bug called Phylloxera, which wiped out much of the French industry and other parts of the world. And so we have the oldest original rootstocks of Shiraz and Semillon, Mourvedre and Grenache in the world, still growing fruit today. So something we're incredibly proud of. So when you're ready, Buddy. Thank you. Why is the Barossa unique? As I mentioned, where is it? We're about 80 kilometres due north of Adelaide. And the climate is described there as being very Mediterranean. We have lovely, warm to hot, dry summers. And our summer, of course, is really around January, February, March, during our ripening stage, where we generally do not get affected by rain. Humidity is not a major concern for us in South Australia. We have those lovely, warm to hot, dry summers, which are ideal for growing grapes. In the Barossa itself, there are some 17 sub-regions that all have different micro and macro climates. That as you enter the Barossa from the southern end, you're entering at around about 220 to 230 meters above sea level. But as you drive the 40 kilometers north, all the way up as you go, you'll arrive eventually at around about 430 to 450 meters above sea level, which is ideal for growing grapes because it's cooler and cooler as it gets further north. The higher the altitude, the cooler the climate, particularly at night, which is very important. But we have no problems in getting our fruit ripe. And indeed, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, we have 8 major complex soil types, right through from very sandy loams to rich, deep-coloured loam soils, and the redder soils that we have, but ideal for growing. And indeed, we have the oldest viticultural soils in the world in the Barossa, well over some 300 million years old are the soils that we are planting our grapes in today. So Barossa Shiraz, I mentioned earlier, is probably the most famous variety through the region. First planted in 1843, but it's renowned for its richness, its full-bodied flavors, its softness, its just wonderful drinkability. And I think it's fair to say, and a wonderful quote that Peter used himself many, many times, when God invented Shiraz, he did so with the Barossa Valley in mind. And that's certainly very true today, and something that, as I mentioned, we're very proud of. So, Buddy, when you're ready. And I know I'll be looking forward to enjoying a glass of Shiraz with you. So, ladies and gentlemen, just to give you a bit of background now on the ranges of our wines. Our wines at Peter Lehmann, the wines that we sell to you all in the marketplace. So our portfolio looks a little like the next slide when you're ready, Buddy. And the first wine we're going to talk about is going to be, you right, Buddy? Our Clancy's Red Blend, our Clancy's. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, I have a bottle here of the 2016 in front of me, and I have a glass poured, so I'm not sure, and many of you are going to enjoy a little glass with me as well as we chat about the wines. If you like, this is a very, very famous wine within Peter Lehmann, as it's one of our blended wines. The vast majority of wine that we make at Peter Lehmann today is strictly varietal. But Clancy's has been a red blend since 1988. And this is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, 37%. It is a blend of Shiraz, 34%. And then we have Merlot, the remaining 29%. And that's out of the 2016 vintage. To me, it has those lovely ripe berry characters, lovely ripe sort of blackberries and currants and lovely fruit characters on there, but also balanced with some lovely French and American oak. Now, this wine has been aged in hogsheads, which are 300-litre barrels that we use predominantly at Peter Lehmann, for around about 12 months, and has some lovely, rich fruit characters on the way through. Now, what we talk about with Clancy's is a style of wine. It is not necessarily a wine that we're going to put in our cellars for any length of time, even though it should be probably 5 to 10 years old. But this is a wine that's wonderfully ready to drink now. Full flavored, lovely soft and round flute. It fills the palate, but has lovely soft tannin at the finish of the palate, and really a great example of Cabernet Sauvignon, Shiraz and Merlot, which, if you like, is almost similar to a Bordeaux blend, but where Bordeaux, they don't use Shiraz, they use Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Merlot and Malbec. But if you like, this is our commercial end, entry-level blended red wine. And it's a very good, honest example of what the Barossa Valley can do. So as you can see there, 6 times winner of the top 100 in the Wine Spectator. It is also currently won, the 2016 has won a gold medal at the Chinese Wine and Spirits Awards, as well as the US Winemakers Challenge, Challenge International Wine Competition, another gold medal. So a wine that we're pretty proud of, and I hope you can drink and enjoy. Cheers.
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 I've got a spittoon here. I hope you're the responsible service of alcohol. So for those of you that are having a sip, you can spit out, but I'll drink that when our session's finished. Now, next slide, Woody. Next slide. Okay. Now, the next range of wines I'm wanting to talk to you about is what we call our portrait range of wines. And as you can see from the label, where we have an artist's impression of Peter Lehmann's silhouette portrait on the labels, on that image you can see we have our Barossa Grenache. To the left, we have our Cabernet Sauvignon in the middle, and we also have our Riesling. And the wine I'm wanting to talk to you about today, to taste with you, is going to be our Riesling. Now this, if you like, in the domestic market, is very much at our entry level. This is a wine that we, at Peter Lehmann, where we have over 140 odd growers that provide the fruit to us every harvest. This is a wine that comes from all those growers all over the valley, from north, south, east and west, and the different styles that we make. But the one I'm going to taste with you at the moment is our 2017 Barossa, or Eden Valley, which is the higher altitudes of the Barossa. We're now talking around about 450 meters above sea level, a beautiful, cool climate, particularly during those hot days. It's much cooler up there. It's about 2 degrees cooler than the Barossa Valley, and ideal for growing quality Riesling. And indeed, as I'll talk to you about our Wigan Riesling in a moment, which has been judged the best in the world. But what we look for with our Riesling, ladies and gentlemen, is lovely citrus characters, citrus lime juice, and lovely flavour and length on the palate, and a delightful style of wine. As I mentioned, we have a Shiraz, which is by far and away the biggest seller. That's our #1 selling wine here in Australia and overseas for export. Then we have our Cabernet Sauvignon, our Riesling, and Grenache, which the Grenache rosé style, and rosés become very popular here in Australia. I'm not sure if that's the case in Indonesia as well, but rosé styles of wine, whether they are from Australia or from France or whatever part of the world, there's a lot of people enjoying quality rosés today. You can see from the wonderful awards there, our Shiraz has won gold medals at the International Wine and Spirit Competition. Our Riesling has won 95 points. This is a 95-point score wine from James Halliday, and the Cabernet Sauvignon at the Mundus Vini competition won another gold medal for us. Our portrait range of wines, very much at entry level, and we'd like to think at a very reasonable price. I hope you enjoy our Riesling on the way through. Good luck. Our Cabernet Sauvignon, as you can see there, the image of that has lovely cassis and blackcurrant notes. Blackcurrant is very much the aroma of this wine. Beautifully balanced, has wonderful length on the palate, going all the way back to your mouth, and the flavour tends to linger and has beautifully balanced with those tannin and oak that we use, generally with that around about 12 months in oak, but a delightful style and a wine that will keep for many, many years. Indeed, a number of years ago, our 1993 Cabernet in this label went on to be judged the best Cabernet Sauvignon worldwide, winning the Warren Winiarski Trophy for us 2 years later in 1995, something we were very, very proud of. But we've got a couple of Cabernets now in levels or rungs above that make that wonderful wines. So next slide, Woody. When you're ready, there's the Riesling, which we've talked about, has lovely lime juice, citrus characters on the way through, lovely length and clean, crisp acidity. And to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, this is an ideal style to have with many of your Asian dishes, served nice and chilled with Indonesian, with Malaysian, with Chinese, Japanese, Asian dishes where we need that lovely, clean, crisp acidity, just adds an edge to the styles of wine quite beautifully. It matches with so many herbs and so many spices, and served chilled is a delightful style of wine. And I'm delighted to report that in the Barossa Valley or Eden Valley, we have world's best practice. Riesling, and I'll talk more about to the Wigan Riesling when we get to that in a moment. But a delightful style. Next slide, thanks, Buddy. Here's our rosé, which is made from Grenache vines, old vine Grenache, and these are about 40 to 50 years old. And as you can see, that pinker style of wine where the color comes from extraction from time on the skins of the berries. After we crush and ferment the wines, we leave this wine on skins for a very short time, so it gets a lovely pinkish hue to the wine. But lovely flavors, again, got lots of strawberries and berry fruit characters, and just a lovely style of wine to have at any stage with lunch or dinner. It's just a beautiful wine, served chilled at the same temperature generally as that of the Riesling or white wines. Served chilled is a delightful, easy drinking style of wine. And we're finding very, very popular here in Australia today. So a wine that I hope you guys will try and enjoy as you go. Next one, Buddy. Now, the next range of wines we're going to talk to you about is a wine that is relatively new to us called the Barossa. In that, when I mention that it's relatively new, it's because we've been making these styles of wines for a long time, but from a marketing sense, when John Casella bought the company and we started researching, we wanted to have a range of wines that sat above the portrait range in quality, but we didn't know the names. And when we did our research, we were staggered to find that no one had ever registered the name the Barossa. And it's a wonderful range of wines. It consists of a Grenache, a Shiraz, and a Cabernet Sauvignon. And the wines that we're going to have a look at today, the first one is the Shiraz. Now, I have a glass of the Shiraz here ready to go. Do you all have that one?
Yes, we have.
You have the Barossa. This is the 2017 vintage, which was a very, very typical classical vintage with us in the Barossa, in that today we tend to probably, our vintages are normally get underway in early January, or they have in the last 10 years, but the 2017 vintage, because we had a lovely, cool, wet winter in 2016, we had wonderful rains during spring where the water holes and the dams and the streams were beautifully full, that we had some wonderful lead into the vintage, and it was about 3 to 4 weeks later than normal, which gave us ideal fruit and wonderful fruit that we were able to harvest for the 17 vintage. Now, Shiraz, what are we looking for when we drink classic Barossa Shiraz? And please, I want to see you swirling it around in the glass if you have some. Stick your nose right in and take the lovely aroma and bouquet of these wines in. When you've got a nose the size of mine, you can get it right into the bottom of the glass, and that lovely berry, ripe berry characters. And what we look for with this is fresh red berries, lots of spice, plummy notes, plum, and dark chocolate, and even aniseedy sort of notes that you can pick up. But hints of spice, even dark chocolate, mocha notes are very much there. And with this wine, it's had time in oak, about 15 months in oak, but this again is a combination of French and American, and that lovely American oak tends to add a nice rich sweetness to the wine and tends to fill it out. Now, where with Cabernet Sauvignon, ladies and gentlemen, you have length on the palate for Cabernet. With good Barossa Shiraz, it fills out the mouth. It's a broad across the palate, but big and soft and round and mouth-filling fruit. And it's what we describe here, quite frankly, just as a yummy, yummy wine. I want another glass. I want a second glass. And it's just beautiful. If you can match this with meat dishes, here we have this with a lot of lamb, a lot of beef, and a lot of red meat dishes, and it just is superb with that style of food. Juicy, red, persistent chocolate characters, and it has lovely, soft, silky, smooth tannins, and a delightful style. And this is a wine that's growing very, very fast for us in the Australian domestic market, as well as our export markets overseas. That image of the Barossa, that image of Peter on the label, It just seems to go so well. And the label's got a certain leathery look about the wine, the leathery look, which just seems to give a certain soft, supple, juicy character just when you hold that bottle in your hand. But more importantly, when you drink it, it's rich, mouth-filling, beautifully smooth. So I hope you enjoy it. Yum. I'm not going to spit that out. The next one is the Cabernet Sauvignon. Again, lovely cassis-like notes, lovely length on the palate, and beautiful vibrancy. It's lifted and got lovely flavors that go all the way through. And at all the same price, they're all what we describe as line priced. So they're all going to be delicious at that price. And I'm not sure what price it'll go on many wine lists for. But here in Australia, that wine would be around about $45 to $50 on a wine list, and is growing in stature very rapidly. An excellent example of good Barossa Cabernet Sauvignon. So the next one is going to be the next one. Is the Grenache. Hang on, the Grenache. And sadly, I've got the wrong image there that we've put on that wine. But the Grenache, if you go back a couple of slides, can you go back a couple of slides?
Woody Mundur.
Woody, can you go back a couple?
Yes.
There we are. You can see the Grenache there. The Grenache is in a Burgundy bottle, not a Bordeaux bottle like the Cabernet and Shiraz. But what we find with that, and please, Woody, wind on the slide again, back to the, if you can, find the Grenache. That's it. Next one. That's it. That's it. To me, we describe Grenache as more of a medium-bodied style of wine. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not as full and as rich as the Barossa Shiraz or Grenache or Cabernet Sauvignon. It's more medium-bodied, which means it's slightly lighter. Now, in the Barossa Valley, where we don't grow a lot of Pinot Noir, we describe this wine as being Barossa Pinot. If you like, it's got those lovely, ripe, juicy berry fruit characters, lovely soft tannins, and hints of pomegranate and rose, if you like, rose petals on the aroma. It's got some lovely peppery notes, cherries, cherry chocolatey nuances to the wine, but beautifully balanced and soft and easy drinking. This is not a wine I'm going to ask you to put away in your cellars for any length of time. 2, 3, 4 years should be about enough. Currently, you'll be drinking the 2018 Grenache, I think is the one in the market, soon to come over. But it's just a lovely style. And where we're finding a lot of people, particularly young ladies, love to drink these richer styles that aren't quite as heavy or as full-bodied, but have lots of flavor. And if you like, we describe this as our Barossa Pinot style. And it's doing very well for us. And we're very happy and proud to be able to present these wines to you. I hope you get all a chance to try that if you haven't got it, but in the coming weeks or months to come. Okay, that's the Barossan range.
Sorry, Malcolm, just a second. I think Grenache is very, very small in Asia, but it is growing a lot in Australia, isn't it? We're getting a lot of growth through that particular varietal.
Absolutely.
So, and especially when the Australians do start coming back to barley again, you know, it should work very well.
We'd like to think more people are going to be drinking those Grenache medium-bodied styles, and Grenache fits that beautifully. That Grenache style fits that medium-bodied, not too heavy, not too light, just right. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be able to present to you our Masters range of wines. And if you like, this is very close to our flagships. And this is we would like to think these wines are considered world's best practice. In this range of Masters wines, which they are all dedicated pretty much to a person. As you can see on the screen there, the first one is called our Wigan Riesling. And out of our 180 growers, we have probably about 40 to 60 growers that provide generally the fruit for these particular wines. We only make of the Wigan, the first one, the Wigan, which is from the higher altitudes of the Eden Valley. We've got about 4 or 5 growers up here that in each year, about 2 or 3 of them will go into the Wigan. We only make about 1,000 dozen for the global market. And this is a wine that we age here in our cellars in the Barossa Valley for 5 years before we release him onto the marketplace. So we're currently about to release the 2014 vintage into the market. Can we go back one slide? Just one slide back to the Wigan. Do we have a Wigan slide? No. The Wigan, which has been judged the best Riesling in the world. The best Riesling in the world on no less than 6 occasions. And it's won over 110 trophies here in the domestic wine market. It's, if you like, the older sister to that portrait Riesling that we drank earlier. Citrus lime characters, beautiful length, lovely clean acidity. It's a delightful style of wine. The second wine, now if you go to the next slide, is our Margaret Semillon. Woody, can we go to the next one? Here we go, our Margaret Semillon. And Margaret, if you like, is from some of the oldest vine Semillon in the world. We grow this on the foot of the Barossa Valley, in the Light Pass and Light Pass and Ebenezer parts of the Barossa. It's just old vine Grenache. Some of these vines are about 130 to 140 years old. And because they've been there that long, their roots go into the ground 40 and 50 feet. And one of the vineyards is 1923 from the Fiebiger family, and another, the Mader family, is from 1925. But what this style has had lovely lemon flower, lanolin, and waxed honeyed characters. As these wines age, and now that they're under screw cap, they will age, we believe, 30, 40, 50 years. And they are great old aged white wines from Australia that have a wonderful world-class standing. And just beautiful again with Asian dishes and chicken and fish, just delightful styles of wine on the way through. Lovely honeyed toasted notes about the wines. And the next one that we have, next slide, Woody, is our 8 Song Shiraz. And ladies and gentlemen, I have a glass of the 8 Songs, which is, if you like, a style that is all about the French oak, and indeed aged what we call old vine material. And the original vintage of 8 Songs was back in 1996, and we released this wine in 2000 as part of the new millennium. And in the vines that had to go into this wine, they had to be well over 100 years old, of which we were able to find in 1996, 97, 98. We had no problems. In 99, it was a bit too warm in 99. So the older vines just said, I want a bit of a rest. But in ensuing years, the majority of fruit now comes from vines that are well over 100 years old. They're wines that we call centenarian vines here in the Barossa. The oldest vines over now are about 130, 140 years, are known as ancestrals. But indeed in the Barossa, we call this centenarian vines. Now, the trick with this wine as well, ladies and gentlemen, it's all in French oak. And in the early days of 8 Songs, it was new oak, but today we're putting it in secondary and third years aged oak as well. It's much softer and has lovely, silky, subtle, soft, smooth tannins, and it just slides down ever so beautifully. It's a delightful style of wine. It has those lovely chocolatey mocha notes, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful wine. And indeed, for many years, we've had a lot of people even say that they probably prefer this to our Stonewall Shiraz, which is our flagship. But that Stonewall's all about strength and power. This is about soft, silky, smooth tannins, and just a subtle, beautiful style of wine. Warm spices, hints of pepper, hints of licorice, but just beautiful chocolatey notes and a delightful style of wine. This is Barossa Shiraz at its very best. 2000 vintage is your current vintage, a very strong, powerful vintage, and it will soon be followed by the 16, which again is one of the great vintages. A couple of wines that you'll drink and enjoy, I have no doubt. Good luck. Okay, thanks, Buddy. Now, ladies and gentlemen, both Josh and I are very proud to put up a slide to you now, which is a new wine to us at Peter Lehmann since John Casella bought the company back in 2014. In his first vintage, he wanted to make an exceptional Shiraz. And boy, this one is. And this is a wine that we now call our Masterson. Now, this wine is made from particular growers, or a particular grower that we have chosen in only the very, very best of vintages. Our first vintage was in 2015. We will have one, we think, in 2016, probably not in 17. In 18, I think we will, but only those exceptional vintages that we think that the wine is of that quality that it's going to be a wine that we're going to release into the market. Basically, to give you an idea, this wine will sell in our domestic market for $1,000 a bottle. This is a wine that has been aged in Foodera barrels, which are about 2,500 to 3,000 litres in size, and it's been aging and mellowing for about 18 months to 2 years, just aging beautifully, ready for release. Each bottle will be individually numbered and labelled for sale. And in the first vintage, to commemorate our 40th birthday, when we released it last year, we released this wine in magnums, which is a 1.5 litre magnum, which is basically $2,000 an item. It has a wholesale price. I'm not sure if we're going to be exporting it, but I'm sure Josh will be only too happy if anyone's interested. But it is a beautiful style of wine, and we're delighted to say that this wine has been awarded 98 points by Hugh and Hook, who's one of the top wine journos in Australia, by 97 points by James Halliday, and it is a wonderful wine. And if this is our first effort, our first vintage, we're delighted to suggest that it's got as many points as it has. I only wish I could share a glass or a bottle with you now. $1,000. This one, Josh would have to pay for that, or even Buddy. Buddy would have to shout us that one.
Yeah.
But I hope that
import duties $2,000 might be $10,000 by the time it gets to Indonesia.
Yeah, that's true.
Very high duties. Yeah.
Okay.
Exceptional wine. Yep.
A truly crafted tribute to a great man. Okay, now what's the next slide, Buddy? I think it's about to give you an idea on where these wines all sit in our portfolio. Here we go, our core range of wines. This gives you an idea from popular premium. These are our commercial or entry-level wines at the bottom. We've talked about our Clancy's, you can see. We've talked about our portrait range of wines. Then sitting in the premium area is our Barossan range. We have the Grenache, the Shiraz, and the Cabernet Sauvignon. And then we go up to our super premium, where we have our masters, our Wigan, our Margaret Semillon. And I did fail to tell you, it was called the Margaret Semillon after Peter Lehman's wife, Margaret Lehman, who's still very much a vibrant part of the company today. Then we have our 8 songs, and we have our flagship Cabernet, a wine called Mentor, which is, I know, a wine that Josh will talk to you all about in the future. But that's very much our Bordeaux blend, being a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, and occasionally a few berries of Shiraz may roll in as well. And then at our luxury level is a wine we called Stonewell, which has been our luxury, our premier wine at Peter Lehmann since 1987. But now we have at the very, very top, since John Cassell has bought and invested in these magnificent barrels, and we've invested in some of the wonderful growers that we have, our new wine called Masterson, which is a great testament to what the Barossa Shiraz can do. So, ladies and gentlemen, that gives you an idea of our core range of wines. So, Buddy, the next slide. If you will, when you're ready. A summary and key points, and hopefully there might be something that you can take away and file here, is I think one of the most important things that we at Peter Lehmann have is that our vision. That vision that Peter Lehmann had. You know, Peter was known as the Baron of the Barossa, the original Baron of the Barossa. And he was, for many, many years, his lifetime, a living legend of the Barossa. And whenever Peter said something, you know, most people in the Barossa certainly took a great deal of note. He was, indeed, a living legend, but sadly no longer with us, and the original Baron of the Barossa. And it's that vision that he's imparted onto us, those that have been lucky enough to work with him for so many years. And indeed, we are now lucky that someone in the name of John Casella also has a great vision for where Peter Lehmann wines will sit on a world scale, and something that we're very proud to think that we can take into the years ahead of us, into the decades to come. It's a timeless craft of winemaking. So that's our vision. Now let's just quickly go to the next slide, Buddy. The reasons, if you like, to believe. If you like, we're talking about our values, our relationships, the region that we live in and grow our grapes in, the wines themselves, and then the total range of wines, the sub-brands that we sell. And at Peter Lehmann Wines, we're very proud of our spirit of collaboration. The word community holds true today with us at Peter Lehmann. We believe in what we do. When Peter Lehmann was founded all those years ago, that we are continuing to take this treasure trove of great vines and wine into the world today. Our values at Peter Lehmann still as they have been from day one. Our relationships with our growers, 140 odd growers that we have in the Barossa Valley that provide the fruit. In fact, you know, only about 1.5% of all our fruit comes from our own company vineyards. We really do believe in working hard and alongside with our family, our community, our growers. We believe in what we do. The region, the Barossa itself, Australia's premier and fastest growing wine region. 20% up in growth in sales and in value to us over the last few years. The Barossa appellation maintains a premium round the world today. Very much making up, when we believe particularly, it's the Barossa and Barossa Shiraz that's led our industry to the rest of the world. Our wines, multi-award winning, both in Australia and on an international scale. Whether in France, we've won the best Shiraz, the best Syrah competition over the years. In London, the centre of wine in the world. In Hong Kong, we've won awards. In China, we've won awards. We've been reviewed highly in the United States. We'd like to think that today we can take our wines around the world confidently and be assessed by all the wine journos very favourably. Our range of wines, which we've talked to you about, we cover all price points, from the very super premium to those at entry level, that make them hopefully accessible to everyone in the market. All your tourists that come and visit you in Bali or in Indonesia, wherever you are, we'd like to think that these wines will be accessible on a wine list and drunk with confidence. So that gives you a pretty good idea. I think the next slide, Buddy, if I remember, the next slide, just the final word. Again, if you like, multi-award winning wines, twice International Winemaker of the Year. And when God invented Shiraz, he did so with the Barossa Valley in mind. And ladies and gentlemen, if you only ever put one wine, of ours on a wine list, make it be the Barossan Shiraz, because that is the wine that exemplifies what we do best, most of, and at an affordable price. And we hope that you have great success in selling our wines throughout Indonesia, particularly in Bali. I hope one day that I'll get a chance to come across and visit you. No doubt Josh will, but I'd love to be able to sit down and enjoy a glass with you all at some stage.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
So, any questions and answers now?
All right. Very interesting. And a very detailed as well. So it's giving us a broad information about Barossa and the wine itself. So guys, if you have a question, you can put it on the chat so we can read it out loud later on. So there's one question: how long aging time for the Masterson?
The Masterson, well, we think that wine would have probably 20 to 25 years at least. And because the first vintage is in a Magnum, that could be even taken out to 30 odd years without too many problems. We think the Masterson has a long future to go of great drinking, particularly in the Magnum. But we think that that's the 15, a very solid vintage. The 16, I think, will be even probably up there, probably even stronger. These are 20, 25 years propositions. They really are, possibly even longer.
All right. And what is the number of the production for the
We make about 14 to 1,500 magnums. About 14 to 1,500. It's aged in the large Foodera barrels, 2.5 to 3,000 litres in size. But we take these wines aside. Look, to be honest, we are just keeping many of them in the Barossa. So when guests arrive, and John has people, VIPs, like you all, when you come and visit us, we'll hopefully be able to pour a glass for you and enjoy it with us along the way. But it's not really about selling them. We don't push it. We're just delighted to be able to suggest these wines are of world's best standard. That's the Masterson.
All right. So, Malcolm, you mentioned about the collaboration with the community through the growers.
Yes.
Right. So, how you maintain the growers, each grower quality of the vine in the vineyard? Do you supervise them, or you have certain quality degree, or what you do to make sure that all the growers make sure that they follow your quality standard?
Yep, we have a viticulturist that works with the company. In fact, we've had 2 or 3 viticulturists that spend an enormous amount of time with the growers. That's their job, literally working in the vineyards with them on 12 months of the year, not just during the harvest, but right through pruning, setting up the vineyard trellises that we set up the vines, and the growing, the pruning, all the viticultural work itself, all the improvement of the soils by putting in nitrogenous legumes that we grow between the vines, but by just working very closely with them. And indeed, our winemakers spend a lot of time with the growers themselves, constantly going out during harvest, picking the berries, tasting them, getting the flavour components before we decide when to take them in to harvest. And with a lot of these growers, because they're small growers, a lot of the vineyards are hand-picked. So they're not picked by the large machines. Some of them are, but the majority are hand-picked and they're hand-harvested. And so we go out and work with them for many years. A lot of these growers are 5th and 6th generation. So going back, they've been having those vines, and we're talking about 100-year-old plus, 130, 140. Those ancestral vines are now over 130 years old. Then the centenarian vines, over 100. And so these old vines need to be handcrafted, cuddled, matured, and some of them these days are irrigated at the appropriate times, but a lot of them, literally the only water they get is when it rains, the condensation that comes, so they're what we call dry-grown vines. But we spend a lot of time, more and more time these days, spending with our growers than ever before. It is so important to get it right in the vineyard. And then when it comes into the winery, all our winemakers to get together and work from there. But it's something that we do spend a lot of time, and we pay our growers significant bonuses for the best quality fruit. If I gave you an example, that say the Shiraz, for our portrait Shiraz, or even our Barossa, the industry figure is generally around about $1,500 to $1,800 a tonne. At that level, we're paying our growers about $2,000. But if your fruit is selected to go into Stonewell or Masterson, we are paying you more than $10,000 a tonne. So we pay our growers very significant bonuses for the better quality fruit to go into the better quality wines. And that's staggered or staged all the way down. So a wine like the 8 Songs, which I'm going to have another sip of, we pay our growers around about $5,500 to $6,000 a tonne.
Right.
So well worthwhile.
Okay.
Any more questions?
So meaning that in your wine score range, when you show us the wine score range with different quality, it's related on the quality of the grape itself. like you mentioned about the different price that you're paying to the grower, but at the same time it's also differentiate between the making process, like longer aging or single
Yes,
vineyard.
that can play a part. Quite obviously, the costs of the berries in themselves do differ.
Okay.
But then what we try and do, and this is where Josh comes into the picture, he and the marketing department, and all of us in that marketing area, decide that we want to sell these wines at a level that makes it easier for you, the agents, and the people selling the wines in the market. So we have a line price, so that all the Barossan range are the same price. The Masters Reds are the same price. The Masters Whites slightly lower, but they have this, so that it makes it easy to understand. The cost of production, though, may be quite a bit different. Quite a bit different. Each year, in and out, and it depends upon the vintage. In good vintages, well, for argument's sake, the 2020 vintage, the yields are very, very down. The yields are down. We've had a lot. Last year was a very dry year. We're on the back of quite a significant drought. So the grapevines are not producing anywhere near as much fruit as, say, they were in 2016.
Yeah.
Nowhere near as much fruit. But so the costs have gone up, but we are trying to maintain that price for you, the people that sell our wine, so that there's consistency in what we do. There's a continuity in the price. And of course, each vintage, the quality is going to be slightly different. We talk about some vintages being slightly better than others.
Yeah.
In 2007, we were in the grips of a drought, not a great vintage. In 2011 was very wet. 2012 was cool but magnificent. The 2012 wines were superb. 2018, which you'll be seeing in very soon, in the next year or so, arguably one of the best in this century so far. 2018 will be some of the best, and from all regions. But of course, the price, it's important that we have this continuity and consistency in price when we sell these wines to you in the market.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say this is just an introductory range. So, Buddy, please jump in where appropriate. But you probably saw that, you know, in Portrait, we're not launching a Shiraz because we've got a Shiraz in the Barossan and also the Masters range.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just really I know we're just introducing it now, but there will be opportunities to extend the range later. So Malcolm spoke about the Wigan Riesling, for example. So we're only doing the Riesling in the Portrait range to begin with, but given the multi-award winning, you know, nature of that brand, there might be opportunities to introduce that into the future.
That's a wine that goes to the very best restaurants globally, around the world.
Sure.
Around the world.
All right. There's another question. It's actually come from Chandra. He was asking about how Peter Lehmann cope with the climate change, considering the recent heat wave going in Australia and the bushfire and etc. recently, whether that will be affected of the quality on that vintages or in the long run, especially with
yes, climate change is something that's very, very, very significant to us. We are very aware of it. We're taking steps to make sure, if you like, that with a number of ways that we're doing it. Now, firstly, for argument's sake, on the Barossa Valley floor, the floor itself can be very hot during the summer. But in the higher altitudes of the Eden Valley and the further north you travel in the Barossa, the climate is generally slightly cooler, 2 and 3 degrees cooler. That's in a normal year. But what we're also learning to do is our canopy management for the grapevine itself. We're setting the vine up and having different trellising systems that will allow the canopy management to shade the berries and the fruit much better during the hotter months during harvest. And literally, we have what we call a tea trellis that has arms that will open up. It just opens up, you can't see. But when it comes to harvesting, we just fold up the tree trellis, exposes the berries so that we can harvest much easier. Also, with what we plant between the vines, we're putting a lot more different things. We're removing, instead of having bare dirt in between the vines, we have canopies, we have crops
Yeah.
We have different crop covers that will tend to cool the temperature down. We'll often put what we describe as mulch down around the vines to try and keep it cooler as well. We're getting better quality irrigating systems as well that help with this climate. But so this is where our viticulturists are coming in and working so much with the growers today, which enables us to look far better, look after our vines much better. I mean, 100 years plus of growing vines. Yes, we are aware that climate change is happening, but we have the methods and the wherefore and the knowledge on how to factor this. In fact, for many, many years, the biggest thing about the Barossa was always the concern in comparison to other regions where they found it difficult to get their grapes ripened. We in the Barossa are sitting beautifully, that we can ripen our fruit beautifully. We have no issues with ripening our fruit. And in the cooler, we talk about our cooler vintages often producing the best, like 2002, 2012, 2014, lovely cool vintages, and therefore the quality is even better. So, and in 18, as I say to you, 18, a magnificent vintage. Just the ripening at the right times, and as long as the grapevines can get a drink and we're not stressed by drought, which at the end of 17 we were stressed by drought, which was a concern. But I think you'll see that by 2019 we were a bit dry, but when we get into 2021, we've had lovely rains here in the winter months so far. 2021 should be a wonderful vintage. That's a few months away yet, but we're excited that our dams are full, the streams are flowing, there's been plenty of water, so there's excitement already coming up.
Is your grower also apply like organic or biodynamic vineyard?
Yes. Organic and biodynamic are very important things to us, but because we're probably producing a little more fruit, a lot of our vineyards we conduct these practices, but without being certified. One of the things about those organic vineyards is that they are not allowed to use any sprays at all, depending upon things. If we get a rain in the summer months, like in the Hunter Valley, and we get humid conditions, we can get powdery mildew or downy mildew, which can settle onto the berries and can ruin it. Botrytis at the wrong time can be very bad to our vines. So you need to have that backup of spraying programs. We've found that there are too many growers that their incomes are too dependent upon that. And so we adopt these practices where we can, but a lot of the vineyards are heading down that path of being certified. But we still have work to go before they do. But we're certainly mindful of being sustainable, is a word that we use regularly. Our practices are very sustainable, that we do the right thing. So only minimal spraying, if any, depending upon the vintage.
Right. There's another question from Panji. Panji, aware about the predominant Shiraz will be known from Barossa. How you actually choose which one that for the premium range and which one is for the entry, because you have all mostly a very good quality Shiraz in Barossa anyway. How you basically choose the premium level of wine or grape to be used?
That's an excellent question, This is done generally by we know from previous history probably who our better growers are. And so we spend more time with them, they spend more time in the vineyard setting things up. But the actual judgment doesn't come until generally in August, September. Our winemakers, after crushing, vinifying, fermenting all the wine, turning it into wine, the wine's now sitting in the barrels at our winery, in our huge barrel halls, that we get down and we classify all the wines by doing a massive tasting, where I'll go and join our winemakers and we sit down, we lock ourselves away for about 2 to 3 weeks, and we go through and taste all the samples, each and every barrel. We get the glass, sniff it, taste it, and that's when we allocate to what brands the wines go to. Now, generally, the older vines can often produce some of the best quality, but not always the case. Some of the 30, 40-year-old vines can produce wonderful quality as well. But what we do is, if it's classed as entry level, we'll pay them around 2,000. And then we steep it all the way up as it goes in that slide that we showed you about our portfolio, our range of wines. By the time you get to Stonewell and up to Masterson, you can earn bonuses of over $10,000 a ton, over 10,000. Generally, with the commercial wines, we look for yields of around about 3 tons per hectare, 3 tons per hectare. But generally, by the time we get up to Masterson and Stonewell and 8 songs, we're talking about 1 to 1.5 tons. So much lower yields, and better quality fruit.
Just by the curiosity, like when you mentioned about the old vine, what is the number? Just to be able to understand, like the old wine, you have more concentrated of the fruit and the quality, right? The flavor component. But in terms of the quantity, so it's less in number, but more in flavor.
More in flavor and concentration, yep.
So in terms of the production itself, meaning that you have very concentrated fruit juice, but at the same time you have very small number of the amount, meaning you are doing the blending for the old wine, or how only or you just do simply lower bottling for the old wine only?
Yep, absolutely. We do both. The more commercial wines that we can make up to, well, tens of thousands of cases, like at the portrait level, they're bigger blends, bigger tanks. But the wines like Masterson, 8 songs, our VSV range of wines, which some we only make 400 dozen, 500 dozen. We might only make, 1,000 dozen. These wines go into smaller tanks, smaller batches. These are what we described as handcrafted wines. And our winery has some very large tanks, but lots of tiny little tanks that we do this. We take these little parcels away and watch them and make them, age them in oak very separately, so we know exactly what we're doing, precisely what we're doing, knowing that we only may make 1,000 dozen, 500 dozen, depending upon what we're doing. Okay. So we do focus very much on handcrafted styles of wines. And this is one of the joys that our winemakers love to do today. We certainly won't say that about Yellowtail. Now, Yellowtail is a wine that we make nearly 13 million cases, and they go into the very, very large tanks. So handcrafted isn't quite the same concept with Yellowtail as it is with Peter Lehmann, if that answers your question.
Must be a very tough job that for the winemaker, that you need to taste all excellent Shiraz and decided which one is the best out of the best. So
it's a very tough job.
Very tough job.
Very tough, but there are a couple of us that are happy to help them out.
Obviously.
It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it.
That's right.
True. All right. There's a question. I think Josh can answer this one. What makes the difference between the icon range and luxury one, which from the processing point of view, and in terms of the price, do they also significant difference between the icon and the luxury?
I think how we would describe between icon and luxury, obviously, is at the price point, but probably the very subtle difference is that we are focusing even more so on individual growers with the icon range. So we've actually singled out particular growers that we are going to focus on. So we have a range that sits even below the Masterson, which we call our VSV range. And so we have, for argument's sake, in this range of wines, which may only be 400 dozen, we have the Rudiger Cabernet Sauvignon. We have the individual Lehman family-owned vineyard, the Lehman VSV Lehman Shiraz. There's the Mick Herndon Shiraz, which is from these individual growers. We have one of them called 1885, because that's when that's from the Schrappel vineyard. That's when the vineyard was planted, 1885. So these wines are very much grower oriented. Where Stonewall Shiraz, which sits in the luxury end, and the masters, we may have 3 or 4 or 6 growers. Over the years, in Stonewall, there may have been 3 growers, 6 growers, 8 growers. One vintage in 2010, we had 20 growers. It was such a wonderful vintage. We had 20 growers. But so we'll blend those wines in at that sort of luxury level where the icon range tends to be just that grower, individual grower level. Does that answer the question, Josh, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, when we talk about the introduction of Masterson, I mean, you know, our vision is to be, you know, the premier wine producer in the Barossa. So we look at a company like Penfolds, for example, that has Grange.
Yeah.
So we're really competing at the very, very top end of the market, or the, you know, iconic or luxury end of the market. And that was one of the reasons for the introduction of the Masterson. And Malcolm put up a slide there where we go very much from entry level right up through to super luxury. And that's all, you know, part of the whole, you know, vision of being the premier brand for Barossa.
Yeah.
And we'd like to think, you know, in years to come, in many years to come, that these wines will be in the same sentence as the great Bordeaux, the great Burgundy from those regions, Appellation Contrôlée, the very best in the world. That when you talk about, you know, great Pinot Noir from Burgundy, talk about great Cabernet blends from Bordeaux, you'll also talk about great Shiraz from the Rhone district as well as the Barossa. So the great Shiraz of the world will be known as coming from the Barossa.
All right. So sorry to disturb. Very interesting about the Grenache, the Barossa Pinot. And the making of the Grenache, are you using also the oak barrel during the production?
We do. That wine will have around about 10 to 12 months in oak as well, but not necessarily the new oak. Okay. This will have secondary and third year oak. At Peter Lehmann, we generally used the hogsheads, 300 litre, but we're also toying around.
Sorry to disturb. Adrian, can you mute yourself? All right. Welcome. Okay, Malcolm. Okay, you're back.
Apologies, I'm not sure how that happened. I
Yeah.
didn't touch it. Anyway, yes, we'd like to think, yes, we're using hogsheads, and the Grenache has generally second to third year oak, and it can be 8 to 10 months depending upon the vintage itself. So because it's more medium bodied, it doesn't have quite as much time in oak.
All right.
And some of these old Grenache vines, years ago, we were using the Grenache to make fortified wines.
Okay.
Ports and sherries and muskets and things like that, using the old Grenache vines, or blending it, or blending it in. But today, Grenache as a grape variety is finding a space for itself. And as Josh mentioned earlier, I'd like to think if it's growing as fast as it is here in Australia in the domestic market, that you'll see some of it over in Asia, Southeast Asia, Indonesia as well.
All right, all right. I think we have to call the last question then for the session. Do you produce your own yeast for fermented, or you get it from other countries?
No, we generally, we have companies here in Australia that provide our yeast that is very, well, when I say standardized, but we're doing a lot of research ourselves to find out which are the better yeast for the different grape varieties. But we don't grow our own. The only one we do is we make a floor sherry that we've had at the winery for our own private use. If any of you know anything about sherry production, pheno or floor, we grow our own floor and have done, and that floor is now 80 years old. It's over 80 years old at the winery, but that's at our cellar door, and it's a magnificent wine that we have just at that, and that was something that Peter was very proud of, that literally when his days at Saltram, he got that going many, many years ago, back in the 1940s, I think it was. So it's about 80 years old. But anyway, yes, the yeast production generally is very, well, yeah, technical. It's clean, so we know exactly what's going on. We don't produce our own at all. No.
All right. I believe that have to be our last question, Malcolm and Josh. It was very interesting. We really enjoyed the wine. Looking forward for the next vintages and also new variants as well to be in Bali and to drink it together by the beach with you, Malcolm and Josh in Bali. That will be sound very.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Firstly, Malcolm, for all your expertise and your wonderful presentation. Thank you very, very much for everyone in attendance as well. How many people do we have? It looks like a lot.
I think the highest number is 35 before.
35.
Yeah,
Okay.
and going back forward like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we're really excited to be coming back into the Indonesian market. So it's a couple of years since, we have been in the market. We're really excited to be partnering with Prima Vine. And we're really looking forward to relaunching in the market. And we can't wait to travel. So
can't wait to have a wine dinner with you then.
That's
May
right.
I thank you all very, very much for your patience today, for attending. May I wish you every success when you get up and running.
Sorry.
Restaurants open again in Bali, and we have tourists coming back. Let's hope it's not too far away and we get through COVID-19 quickly. But may I wish you every success. Good luck, Buddy. Thank you so much for having us on board.
Thank you so much once again.
Thank you very much for your time, Malcolm.
Right.
Thank you.
And also you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
see you soon, yeah, Malcolm.
for
Bye-bye.
Malcolm and George. Thank you so
All the
much
very
for Budi. From Prima Wine, thank you so much. From San as well for the wine, thank you so much. Just to remind you all, we still have the next session, which is on Thursday, still 3 o'clock. We are going to program. So there will be another session at 3 o'clock. I will send in later on.
Thank you, Bu Widya.
Thank you so much for everybody. So I see you again. I will send you the recording and also the manual for the session for your further learning then. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.